Hey, everybody. Christian Pedersen, joined by Dan Dickau. As always, welcome back to another episode of Gonzaga Nation. Thank you for tuning in on a mailbag episode where Dan Dickau answers your fan viewer submitted questions. Dan, let's cut right to the chase. This one was kind of interesting because I think that somehow you're going to have to thread the needle of making this all a compliment, like some constructive criticism type, but I'll be interested in what your answer is. One of the viewers wrote in and they want to know, how do you think Coach Few has improved over the last 2 decades as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question right there. I think, I was at the beginning of his head coaching career. I knew him as an assistant when he was recruiting some of my AAU and high school teammates. Then I knew him as an assistant when I decided to transfer because Coach Monson was in place. But all the current players at that time said Coach Few was instrumental in everything they did, and that if Coach Monson did leave, which ultimately he did, that they were all excited to have Coach Few kind of take over. That happened. And then the kind of continual ascension of the Gonzaga program has occurred under Coach Few. So I've kind of seen a lot of these steps. I played under Coach Few at a time where we were starting to transition out of flex offense and beginning to do some I don't want to call it blocker mover offense because that's not the right terminology with how Coach Few coaches it, but it's essentially a motion offense with some pick and rolls. It's gradually translated over the years into, during Morrison's time, it was a lot of isolation sets, and rightfully so. Then it has become a lot of the kind of playing in space, playing with European continuity ball screen offense, which has been a lot of what they've done over the last, maybe 8 to 10 years. And they've tied that in with keeping a lot of high-low emphasis, which they've always done. They've tied that in with a lot of ball screen. They've tied that in with a lot of, post-up opportunities because of a guy like Petrushev, and then or Sabonis, then Petrushev, and then Drew Chimney over the last couple of years. It's been really, really interesting to see the growth of his coaching acumen, the feel of his coaching acumen. He continues to improve as a coach, and he will be a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done.
Love it. Next question we got. This one's kind of interesting also. I mean, these are all great questions. And remember, you guys can submit them at Fan Nation Zags on all the social media. Make sure you also hit that follow or subscribe button. It's always appreciated. What do you think is the most common misconception about Gonzaga from people outside of the GU universe?
That's a difficult one. I think all the time you hear, well, they don't play in a very good conference. So I think I'm going to take this answer in a route that is WCC related as opposed to Gonzaga related. You're going to find your Gonzaga haters regardless, just because they're not, part of the Power Five conferences. Is who do they play? What do they play? Well, there's nothing Gonzaga can do about that. They schedule their non-conference as best they can to alleviate any of those potential concerns through the selection committee with how they are seated in the NCAA tournament. But I'll take it in the route with, in regards to the WCC is a much better league than it gets credit for. When you look at 2 years ago, you had 3 teams in the NCAA tournament: San Francisco, St. Mary's, Gonzaga. This past season, you had St. Mary's who won a game, and Gonzaga. When people say, "Oh, they don't play in a very good league," well, I would say, okay, well, take your middle of the road Big Ten team, and let's see how they do if they play in St. Mary's gym. Let's see how they do playing at Loyola Marymount this upcoming year. Let's see, if an SEC team that's, trending, 8 to 12 in that league. Let's see what they do. They won't go play Gonzaga. Matter of fact, Gonzaga won't play them in a home and home because it doesn't do anything for their schedule. Same with St. Mary's. St. Mary's is not going to schedule a lower rung team from the Big Ten just because, oh, we want to play a Big Ten team. They're not going to do that. They'd rather go play a good team in the Mountain West, a good team in the Atlantic 10, a good team in the WAC or the Pac-12. It's going to do better for them than playing one of your bottom rung teams. And most of the people that make this complaint are your fans that are not Duke, are not North Carolina, are not Baylor, are not Kansas. So they realize they've played Gonzaga over the years. They've lost to Gonzaga. Most of the fans that are making this complaint are your fan base that is from a school that is typically not in the upper tier in any of these Power 5 conferences. So I know I kind of went in a different circle and a different answer in a different way to answer that question, but I think it's more of a WCC based answer as opposed to just a Gonzaga answer, because the WCC is better than expected.
Yeah, and it's still very much tied in with Gonzaga's identity.
For sure.
So it is. You are not meandering in the wrong direction. I thought it was the answer. Next one that we got is, if you could take one past Gonzaga player out for a drink at Jack and Dan's, who would it be?
Interesting. There's so many great characters from Gonzaga's, far past, and then there's so many Gonzaga characters from their recent past. It's kind of one of those things where, over the couple years when COVID kind of shut down practices, and I would still be able to go, but I'd have to sit up higher and watch. I didn't really get to know Chet Holmgren or Jalen Suggs or at least talk with them in the way that I've talked with, guys like a Drew Timme or, Rui Hachimura, playing pickup with these guys, or Shema Karnowski. That's kind of the era of Gonzaga basketball that's still kind of, quietly unknown to a lot of guys and fans. That there was access, but there was limited access. Guys like myself who would go to practice all the time, didn't really even get down there and meet these guys the way that we have had in years past. I guess those would be the two quick and easy ones to say, is Suggs and Chet Holmgren. I would have liked to, get to know them a little bit more in regards to truly why Gonzaga. Both of those guys had their pick of any schools in the country. They're both top 5 picks. Let's dive into what it was about Gonzaga. Were there any regrets? Are there any things that they wish that's left on the table that they wish they could have accomplished individually or as a team?
Fair enough. I love it. Last question that we got. Remember, you can submit all of these at Fan Nation Zags, where you can follow us on social media, wherever you get us. Also, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and follow Dan on social media at Dan Dickau 21. Dan, last question that we got is, I know that this is the realm of hypothetical, and I'm not forcing you to say that you want to leave Spokane, but this is viewer submitted. If you had to move somewhere out of Spokane, where would you go?
If I had to move, wow. My family were happy in Spokane. But if we've always said, if there's an opportunity, we will listen. We'll see what it might entail. To be honest with you, a few years back, I interviewed with the Houston Rockets for a player development position. I interviewed actually with Valparaiso years ago when Bryce Drew was the head coach. Oddly enough, had that come to fruition, I would have been as co-coaches with Roger Powell Jr. before he came to Gonzaga. Roger Powell Jr., as we know, is now the current head coach at Valparaiso after spending 4 years at Gonzaga. So the basketball world is intertwined, interconnected in many different ways. Those are opportunities that came to me that I didn't seek. But if people, are interested in myself being a part of their organization or their program, I'm willing to listen. This broadcasting gig that I do for a number of different networks, if somebody wants to say, hey, we want to expand our coverage, or we're looking for a new analyst, whether it's at the NBA level or a network for the college level, and it's a different place in the country. I'd be curious. I would listen. I wouldn't say no until I heard all the details. That being said, if I were to pick and choose somewhere to go, not based on a job, just to go.
I think that's more what people want. Yes, for an answer.
Yeah. I really like the Montana, the Big Sky country. I do. I do like the South in regards to Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia. I was with the Hawks for a year and a half. I was so young, I didn't get a chance to really, um, branch out and see a lot of that area, but I would love living down there. Texas is a place that, as a player with the Mavericks, I loved. So I would be interested in. I would be open to moving to Dallas in particular. I thought that was a tremendous area. But at this moment in time, my family and I were happy in Spokane. We love it here. But never say never. Never say never.
Yeah, you sound like you could very easily pass for being the head of the Spokane Tourism Board. That is a resounding and solid endorsement of your city. And reminder, these are just hypotheticals. I hope the family doesn't hear you in the background talking about moving and is going, Dad, what's going on right now? But no, thank you so much, Dan, for answering these viewer submitted questions. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Gonzaga Nation. Remember, follow us at Fan Nation Zags on all your social media and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk to you next time.